on time online.
That's a miracle.
It is a
There's
miracle.
the miracle right there.
And I think we're just a little bit crooked today. Oh, that might be a little
That
bit
would
better.
work well
All
with
right,
the
great.
letting go phase of the
Fantastic.
moon, right?
Right.
Being a little bit crooked today. How much longer are we in the letting go phase?
Hello, everyone. This is Mystery and Megan.
Megan.
And
Nice to
we
meet
are
you.
here with Mysteries and Miracles of Love, relating along the new moon.
Relating on the lunar cycle.
Lunar
Instead of
cycle.
dating, we are lunar cycle relating.
And there's so much power to it. So to answer your question, Megan, we are in the letting go phase right after the full moon, when we're conscious and really aware of what's happening with the moon. Then we can feel some things and we can see some things in our mind that we're ready to let go. And then in this phase, directly after the full moon, which we have one more day in, tomorrow we start New Perspective. This is the letting
nice.
go phase, where we really have an opportunity to go deep. Remember the sorrow card? It talks about the arrow going all the way in. How far does the arrow go? Where does your pain, where's the source of it? And go to it and let go. What a fabulous time. We can really use the lunar cycle. It's perfectly set up in its positioning to give us the right energetic frequencies to let go. So we honor ourselves by going with it.
Well, and are there any things right now that you're feeling called to let go? And we've been in this phase of the lunar cycle, is it about 3 days?
Right.
So this is the last day of it. And so this is where we want to pay attention to what sort of thoughts, what sort of feelings have really been coming up. And if we're being asked to reevaluate the way we've been looking at things, some of the beliefs we've been holding, some of the, for me it was, my phone. Decided to let go of my phone somewhere along the way today.
And somehow we're still here. And for me, you've been witnessing my process. This full moon hit this water sign very, very hard. Actually, it was beautiful. The full moon was not. It was a couple of days after I felt like I got kicked in the gut, and I have been able to do some of the most deepest, extraordinary work of my life, and I'm very, very grateful for that.
Yeah, there's that opportunity to really dig deep, or there's the opportunity to suppress, and there's the opportunity to avoid.
Right.
And I think, part of working with the lunar cycle is recognizing it as part of a process so that we can get out of judgment, so that we can get out of suppressing, so we can say, this is actually the time to really let myself dive in to what needs to be released, really dive into what needs to be let go of. And that's, I think, one of the beautiful parts of relating on the lunar cycle, or just using it in our lives personally, is saying, I'm really going to dive in right now, because this is a time where it would be really potent, because it's matching with the energy of Gaia, it's matching with the energy of Mother Earth and the lunar phases.
We have the greatest opportunity in human history to live one's purpose. And the way that we've gone after life in the past isn't going to work the same as it is going forward. Going forward, simply all the people, I believe, that are taking this time to really reflect inward, Megan, and let go. What an opportunity to shed old belief systems, old ways of doing it, raise the vibration, let your vibration carry you into what the new age, the new order is going to be. And all the people that are suppressing, watching a lot of TV, still doing the football thing, really focusing on the political situation to, we're all responsible for what we're putting in and what we're letting go of. And I feel like there's going to be a real difference coming out of this thing. All the people that have done all the work, all of a sudden they're going to just find opportunities given to them that they could have never dreamed of before.
Well, yeah, and I think also to even recognize in present moment that we're always getting out what we're putting in, and that's just on an energetic level. So if I'm, putting out a bunch of fear, if I'm putting out a bunch of judgment, if I'm putting out that, to expect that that's something that's going to be reflected back at me. And the same is true regardless of what's going on externally. If we're putting out peace, if we're putting out forgiveness, if we're putting out compassion.
In this phase of the moon, it's only our responsibility. Nobody's going to do the work for us. If we see ourselves having a judgment about someone else, we've immediately got to correct that and recognize it as a judgment really to the self.
To
It's
the
a
self.
self-criticism that we've projected outward, made up a story about. But we can self-correct that, then our whole world can change, and by simply being aware.
Yeah, we might need to use your glasses today because my
Oh.
contacts are super dry. So.
Got it.
Oh, good to see you, Christopher. I just can't actually see far enough to see what you said, so that's why we're going
He
to
said
have
he's
to
so
tag
glad to
team
be
it.
here.
Oh, amazing. So glad that you're here as well. You know, and just to circle back to last week, so we have some names that are in
Oh, that's
the
right.
drawing because we're going to be giving out 3 Love Lingo t-shirts. I believe you can access the website from our page, but if not, we'll correct that shortly after this. And so please be on there and looking at what shirts you might be interested in. And the way to enter for the giveaway of the t-shirt is just to share this video or write a comment on what you would like to hear us talk about moving forward. But today we're on We Don't Know.
Or go to our YouTube
Yeah.
channel too, where all of this is also. All the videos are placed, and there's some other videos to share. So
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
we did. We started a YouTube channel, guys. So we'll get that information out to you.
CJ says all judgment is judgment of self,
Absolutely.
and that's the great lesson. Is that we are self-reflective, and we have to know that about ourselves and be able to see that that's what we're doing.
Or else we're just projective. If we don't actually recognize we're reflective, then we'll just project.
Yeah.
And that's a challenging place to be in because it's a lack of empowerment. It's a lack of empowerment. It's a loss of power when we're in any sort of blame. And I mean, any curse can turn into a blessing if we want to use it to heal ourselves.
Yeah.
So that reflection of me I don't like to see, how can I use that to heal myself? How can I use that to forgive? How can I use that in this phase of the moon? How can I use that to let go?
Right. Because if we're having constant thoughts about someone else, about they were unjust or didn't do something right, or they didn't treat us well, those are simply judgments about the self. And really train ourselves to look at everything through the divine eyes. God created this, it's perfection, and whatever response I'm having to wanting what is to be different, then that's the work that I've got to do right there. Because
Yeah.
life is what it is.
And A Course in Miracles calls that Christ's vision, but with A Course in Miracles, Christ is considered the one true self that we all share.
Yeah.
Right? So how can we look through the eyes of recognizing that I'm seeing a reflection of my one self? And that's also why a judgment of another is a judgment on myself. So yes, it's getting into some kind of ethereal places, but I also think that us being in the state of judgment is a challenging, resistant energy in the first place. So there's no way I can judge you without it having an impact on myself because I've just evoked and created the energy that's then painful and creates a sense of suffering or separation, fear, or anger in myself. So we can't escape it either way, whether you stay in the ethereal plane or you bring it really tangibly, that I can't escape my judgment on you.
Well, this is a good segue because what we were going to talk about today is communication. We don't know how to communicate between human beings, partners, connections. And so we have not explored this at all. And we wanted to warn you that we're both have our Mercury in Pisces, which means that we're going to be communicating in the way that we communicate that hopefully will work for you.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I think astrology can be a really powerful tool to use in communication.
Absolutely.
Even the fact that we both know that we have that similarity, that's part of the draw, that's part of the connection, that's we can stay in kind of dreamy places and both feel very comfortable there. But who's to say if some other signs in the planet of Mercury, they might not be as fond of our communication style.
But where we're coming from
Yeah.
is if we can really take the responsibility to be 100% responsible for our experience and recognize that we are self-reflective, then that's going to change my approach in communication, whether I'm on the receiving side, listening side, or whether I'm on the other side. In other words, if I'm upset about something, and we have an agreement that we're divine creators, that we're all responsible, but somebody kind of loses that recognition, which is what happens. We get triggered,
Yeah.
right? We lose the eyes of God for a moment. It's like, how then do we slow the play down enough to get back into the remembrance that what is happening is an opportunity to heal, to even things out, to be heard, to be understood, and that any sort of you energy, push energy, out here projection energy is simply going to cause more static in the field. And so how do we hold that space, Megan, where regardless of how we get into it, we can always find our way back?
I think this has a huge part to do with the new moon and with setting intentions with each other, is setting the intention that when one of us forgets, what we're looking for is the other person to remind us. And I think we tap back into the idea of innocence again. We
Right.
tap back into the idea of innocence, and what A Course in Miracles would call it would be that's a call for God, that's a call for love, that's a call for healing. And so what would it look like if when somebody is being snappy or a little bit avoidant or showing up in some sort of way, instead of us personalizing it, what would it look like if we were to say, "Are you okay? Hey, what's going on? Are you okay?" If we recognize it as the call for love, how much more prepared would we be to answer?
A couple of things there. One of the things you're saying is we have to train to see every occurrence as a call for love.
Yeah, it either is love, and it either is love, which means it's truth, or it's a call for God. It's a call for healing.
And your mom says just being willing to voice something opens up letting go of all that does not serve us.
Yes. And part of the idea of innocence, or us setting up this intention that we want to see each other as innocent, I think has been able to show up in our connection in a couple of ways. And it's been a really beautiful and really powerful experience to know individually that we're committed to seeing each other's innocence. And so it creates a sense of safety to be able to express and to voice those concerns, the resistance that's coming up related to our connection or individually in other areas of our lives, and to feel as though we've intentionally worked on creating a safe space to be able to express and to voice that.
So let's pause on that point for a second. It's like going to church or any other kind of ceremony or whatnot. You take time and you drop into the space. And so what you're saying is, let's create a container for our connection, and so that we have a container so that whenever we get to this place, we can call on the container to help us. And the container is one of innocence, and it's one of I see you, you see me, divine creation.
Well, that's one of the beauties of relating on the lunar cycle, as well as to, from the beginning, recognize that there's an ebb and a flow that's going to happen within any connection. There's an ebb and a flow that's going to happen within every individual. And so to recognize and to be paying attention to the patterns and to say, oh, you know what, I think this came up around the same time last month. And then it's not about personalization or taking it personally. It's about just becoming aware and curious. I think curiosity is a really beautiful and innocent place, rather than accusation, rather than thinking we know. Instead, we're going back to we don't know.
Right, we don't know. Yeah, I'm curious why I've got this story running around in my mind. Can I get it off my chest or whatever it is? And then all of a sudden you've given an opportunity for this voice to be heard. That usually it's what's behind the voice that is the nectar. And what comes out in the voice and what comes out in that moment is a regurgitation of what was holding the truth in.
Yeah.
And so we want to get to that part. So it's how do we, in a lot of, I have this heart that sort of is in the middle of all the caricatures on all the t-shirts and whatnot. We talk about people coming together in the 1, 2, 3, the individual 1, the individual 2, and then bringing in a third consciousness, the God consciousness, however you want to look at that. And this is really when we call on that place, when we really, the moment can sometimes in communication get bigger than the both of us.
Well, yeah, and even, the idea of the top of the triangle could be the higher purpose. And so from the beginning, to set the part of the higher purpose is to witness each other's innocence, because we're really trying to come into contact and into awareness of our own. And so what a great teaching, learning opportunity for that, where you get to experience it in lifetime with someone who's at that moment playing a significant role in your life and is a consistent reflection.
Right. Nowhere to hide.
Nowhere to hide.
And what a beautiful thing. Set up a game where you can't hide. Set up a game. I mean, this is a game between the two of us. We want to see
and not who wins.
No, we both win. That's the point. It's a new game.
New game. Everybody wins.
To create a world where we all get what we all want, it has to start. The foundation of it has to be in how we treat ourselves, and then what does the reflection of the self look like in the reflection of the intimate partner, and even the business partners and the community partners and all the other folks that are so important in our lives. It really starts here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we are. Let's see. So we're in the letting go phase. Next, what happens is new perspective. So we're almost 3/4 of the way through the lunar cycle. So we set our intentions at the beginning. We go all the way through to look at our resistance. We get the illumination of the truth on the full moon. Now we're in the letting go phase. That gives us a new perspective starting on tomorrow afternoon and Monday, the 3rd quarter, which means now what we've done is we've shedded some of these emotions, some of these beliefs, some of these ways of being, some of these actions some of these habits perhaps. And then now all of a sudden, because we've shed something, we've given ourselves less density to hold on to, and we can see through the minutia that used to catch us up, and we can catch a new perspective on how do we end strong in this lunar cycle.
Yeah, and I think if you're, lunar cycle relating, I think you're more familiar with the lunar cycles. When is the ideal place for us to start, having the discussion about the new moon? I mean, does that happen before, or does that happen at that phase? I'm not sure if that's something that maybe would begin around the new perspective.
Well, to use your communication cues, we're curious, right?
Yeah.
We're curious.
Yeah.
Like, what's coming up for you in this new perspective? I mean, you certainly, this Aquarian has been very observant of this Piscean who's going through radical change and letting go. I mean, wow. It's like a reality show over here, how much letting go. No, and there's a curiosity about that.
Yeah.
There's a curiosity in me. What is all this letting go going to give birth to? Because it's always been that way in my life. And that's what the moon is trying to teach us, is that life ebbs and flows. It goes through cycles, and we can go right through with it and manifest from this place of letting go. So I'm curious about it. I think we just are curious about, what's tickling our fancies, and
I think
see how it comes
also
up.
that brings up another point about communication that I think is really helpful, which is the idea of letting someone have their own individual process without personalizing. Mm-hmm. And when you don't personalize, then what's beautiful is you can actually show up as a container in a safe space for the energy of whatever is wanting to come through, without suddenly sending you off into your own. I mean, whatever it could look like. It could look like a train wreck sometimes if you let your mind run away. And that's where I think just respecting everybody's process, realizing how it aligns together, how it's for the benefit of the whole, to allow someone to go through their process. And it actually brings up this really interesting topic. I wonder if we can dive into a little bit. So A Course in Miracles talks about the idea that empathy is not to suffer with. And I think a lot of times, especially in New Age or New Age communities, there's this idea of, people who are going around and, who go out, and I know this because I used to be this person, right? So I'm speaking from personal experience. And just, oh man, I'm just feeling everybody's energy, and it's, oh man, I'm so drained, all this stuff going on in the world, it's taking so much out of me. And what I had to realize is I had to shift my perspective about what empathy was, which A Course in Miracles helped me with, which is to say that empathy is not to suffer with. And what made sense to me about that is the idea of when I decide to take on somebody else's energy, when I decide to take on somebody else's emotions, that's actually, like the way I see it now, that's inherently selfish, because I'm making everything that's going on with the other person suddenly about me. And so when there's been those conversations or those kind of clickbait topics about empaths versus narcissists, one of the things it says about narcissists is that they inherently make everything about them. And I can see how if you go too far into the idea of empathy, of taking on everybody else's stuff, that actually lends itself to some of the traits that, you know, this empath versus narcissism thing that's out there in the world. And it can really go too far on the spectrum to almost being the exact same thing.
And there's simply energy equations bumping into one another, and they're great teachers, you know. And this comes at really what you and I are bouncing around with, which is, yes, what you're saying has absolute validity, and if we really are dedicated to seeing the innocence in everyone, then we can see beyond that pattern, and we don't have to get hooked by it. That's giving us the power of it, you know, and you know, nobody's out there trying to take something from you that you're not willing to give. It's it's a law. It's like cause and effect. You know, we're beings of cause primarily, which is we just are simply love. As soon as we go into and we fracture that and we go into effect, then we start creating the negative karma. We start having the negative self-thoughts that look like judgments at other people, or we want things because of lust and not because of our true, you know, purposeful desires and that kind of thing. So, you know, to be a person of cause, just truly cause, is to remember that we're all innocent, and even in those situations when we let that go, I feel like we bolster our own sort of empowerment and therefore a defense against sort of getting dragged into some of those situations.
And then becoming a container for our own energy so that we are able to show up more compassionately to others, because I think a lot of times the idea of a trigger, then hitting another trigger, then, you know, and it becomes a snowball effect when really it might have just started off with someone not getting enough sleep last night or being hungry, angry, lonely, tired. It's like, halt. And, you know, suddenly
isn't this where the patterns grab us? Usually we're a little off kilter, you know, we've had a few long days at work, and kids are sick or whatever it is, right? And
yeah, it looks different for all of us, but
the moon is full.
Yeah, the moon is full. That could be it. We're in the letting go phase, whatever.
But you know, if you know the moon is full and you catch yourself in kind of a crazy act, or your connecting partner in doing some little thing, you can immediately reference the moon and say, "Oh, wait a minute, everything's heightened right now. I don't need to jump into the heightened sense with them."
Yeah, well, and I think you and I have both had the experience throughout the time of our connection where we've both been able to reference or be able to discuss when we've had resistance come up regarding the connection.
I did it the other day.
Yeah.
And it solved it.
Yeah, isn't that's part of what we're wanting to talk about or share the experience.
Yeah.
You know, of that. And what was interesting is that the idea of not personalizing, the idea of letting someone just have their process without taking it personally, it didn't have to go to some sort of snowball effect, because it was perfectly okay for him to have resistance even while I wasn't. Whereas I can see different times in my past where if that would have come up without all this intention setting, without all this communication and transparency we've done on the front end, it would have been really hard not to have taken that into some sort of story or some sort of narrative. And instead I was just able to continue on throughout my day, and I mean, it wasn't and
I brought it to you from a peaceful place.
Exactly.
I'd already been working on it. Just by the way, I just wanted to mention because I want to be transparent that my mind had some resistance to what we're doing. I mean, it was so strong in this sort of full moon thing and whatnot. I was wondering if we would do a show today. I mean, really. And now it's so natural to be here, and you know, it's interesting. So that's the power.
So we're lucky the full moon wasn't on a Saturday.
Yeah, wait till that happens, and we'll see.
Communication does solve problems.
Yeah, lack of communication certainly creates them.
Yeah, and I know CJ said something too, but my contacts are just so dry.
She said it's really important to let people be in the place that they need to be in to process what they're going through right now. You know, we're all going through it, and that's really true. I had amazing conversation with two brothers last night, and you know, the truth is we are all in it right now, and we all want to help one another, but it seems to be that each one of us are on an individual journey of sorts, and wow, it's really, really interesting. What a new world we are stepping into. Yeah.
And another thing that we had discussed earlier was on the idea of when there's things that have also occurred in the past and being willing to be honest about the things that have happened in the past. And I think Tanya brought this up last week, the idea of being able to really even communicate our own patterns within relationships. And that does take the self-awareness of us actually taking the time after relationships, have ended or concluded, to really do an inventory of sorts, to really check on what our patterns have been and the ways we've been interacting and relating in the past, and the things we're looking to reset and move forward from. We're not trying to stay stuck in the past, but at the same time, I think it's great to have the sort of connection and communication where we can bring up if there's grief over the past coming up without personalizing it. If there is, if there are patterns that we're witnessing showing up within ourselves, and being able to call those out.
And if we can move them with, we've got different questions. The question for this time period is very easy. It's like, what are you ready to let go of? Like, what's no longer serving you that you're ready to let go of? Get real honest with that, and use the power of the moon to let it go.
Is the way I'm choosing to see this serving me, taking the accountability, but also saying, are there some beliefs, some limited concepts of self, some old patterns where it's like, is the way I'm choosing to see this still serving me? And we can always gauge that by the way we feel. Am I experiencing peace? Am I experiencing joy?
And that's true for the connection too, because if you keep letting go, the closer you get to the new moon, the more harmony there, the more of the sort of obvious choice that's there.
Yeah.
But the closer to the new moon you get, if the disturbance isn't going away, then all of a sudden I think, because you've dedicated yourself to being innocent, you've dedicated yourself to saying the truth and being transparent, not letting anything hide under the corners of the rugs, so to speak, then really you ought to be able to resolve the resistance and just coast into the next thing and be ready for the next lunar cycle and go with power. And it's a truth teller, Megan. I mean, I feel like the lunar cycle is, if you're really practicing it, there's nowhere to hide, and you will eliminate the connections that are not pristine, that isn't the right one for you. Learn the lesson right away rather than carrying this thing out. And so you have this amazing opportunity to hit the refresh button on every new moon and do exactly what you're talking about in the Course of Miracles, which is not taking what is back there and bringing it into today's experience. And that's really what is happening in this letting go phase. And new perspective is we're letting go of everything that happened here that might be troublesome too, by being honest about it.
Yeah, and the honesty is such a great opportunity to clean things up. Last week I worked with my grandfather to clean all the stuff. It was probably years of accumulation of things that had ended up in the trunk of my car. And to me, that's such a great analogy for suppression when it comes to emotions, when it comes to thoughts, when it comes to feelings, is that, it was this idea of, okay, I want everything to seem, clean or put together when someone comes in my car. So that means everything in the back seat goes to the trunk. Everything in the back seat goes to the trunk. In your case, it could be, everything in the room goes to my closets.
Sounds like an ENFJ thing to me.
It probably is an ENFJ thing. But, I thought that was such a great analogy for emotions, is we can suppress it until it wants to boil over. Or we can be working with each other along the whole cycle, communicating and cleaning it up as we go along, by addressing it, by acknowledging it, and by recognizing that everything we're experiencing is okay. What a beautiful way to get out of self-judgment, to feel safe within a partnership, to be able to bring it up, and to know that that person has the intentions of seeing you as innocent. So then you realize that everything that you're feeling and experiencing is okay.
Sounds great. Where do I sign up for this?
You're already in it, so at least the new moon.
Hey, it's Barbara Wilder.
Oh, hi, Barbara. So good to see you.
I dropped my glasses. I don't know what's going on.
Oh, there they are.
She says, hi, darlings, from the great darling of them all. She got married.
My birthday twin. Yes.
Oh, yeah, I'm not supposed to say that. That's right. It's a secret.
Barbara, you are such a love and a light.
So let's see, what else have we got to talk about?
What is this?
This is your mom. She says, Megan, are you an ENFJ person? Mama got to know.
I am an ENFJ.
So am I.
Yeah, we're both ENFJs and Mercury and Pisces.
Yeah.
I think, is that where our chart similarities end?
Yeah. Begin and end, I believe.
Yeah, that's where it begins and that's where it ends.
And so let's talk about astrology. Here we are.
Yeah.
You know, there's this great CJ was speaking about it before. We're talking about having a gathering here at the River House on the 21st of December. Sort of feels like the tail end of the shift between the Piscean age and the Aquarian age. You know, maybe the beginning happened a decade or two ago, and now it's like full force energetics astrology into, you know, calling a lot of transformation for a lot of people and great societal change, you know.
Yeah, well, we have Saturn and Jupiter going conjunct, which means they're going to be at the same place at the same time, I believe at 0 degrees of Aquarius on the winter solstice. And so that's in my sun sign, so we'll see what that wants to bring up. But, you know, for those of you who might be like me and have a lot of planets in Capricorn, hallelujah, Saturn's getting off of us. But just to play with all of the energies and all of the tools out there. So we've talked about, you know, we just talked about the, what is it, the Myers-Briggs?
Yeah.
The Myers-Briggs, that's the ENFJ, that's a personality test, which can be a great communication tool to find out, you know, if one partner is an extrovert versus an introvert, then it's like, how do you take care of both of those energies within the relationship, or allow enough freedom for each energy to take care of itself? You know, but then, you know, there's astrology and there's so many planets. You know, Mercury is specific to communication. And so, you know, it's great for us to know that we have a lot of similarities in that area. It makes communication a little bit easier.
Well, astrology is simply a map of how energy is pulling at you. And it's a very useful tool to know how we get caught in certain aspects. And we can see how these things that feel like weaknesses are simply just astrological energetic equations, and that we can actually use that energy for our gain to improve ourselves if we really understand its limitations and we counterbalance it. So
how to work with it.
Yeah, and you and I can lay our charts over each other and see the easy places where we could get tripped up and the easy places that we can coast and have a lot of fun, you know. So that's great information to have.
Yeah, where's it? Yeah, there's a lot of places that it's easy and fun, and then you can look at other placements and it's, you know, Venus and Aries versus like Venus and Capricorn, but then we get to facilitate a conversation where, you know, Venus and Capricorn really cares about, you know, love having a purpose, love doing something, accomplishing something, getting somewhere, and that's great with the Venus and Aries because it's a big starter energy, a cardinal sign.
People are who they are, and you know, we have charge over ourselves, and that's about it. How we experience life, you know. But to get to know somebody and to get to know yourself and to really honor both of those as individual blueprints and divine creations, astrology has been one of those things that has really allowed me to see the brilliance of it in a new light. So
yeah, and you know, that made me think of another point. This is the air sign thinking, right? Like shoop shoop shoop, goes to all these various places. But you know, it made me think about the idea of when we don't show up authentically, what we're really telling ourselves is we don't deserve to be loved for who we are. You know, when we're thinking we have to change, when we're thinking we have to show up differently, when we have to hide aspects of ourselves in order to get and receive love from someone, we're teaching ourselves in that moment that we're not lovable. And the thing is yeah, if you show up as your true and authentic self, it might turn some people away. Like there's, you know, but the love you get is going to be authentic. Whereas if you show up as someone you think other people want you to be, you're not going to be able to really receive that love to the full capacity either way, because you just had to compromise yourself in order to get it.
you said on the last show, you said you might as well go ahead and get everything out when you first meet somebody.
Put it on the table.
Who are you? And and is there a good possibility for us to really get to know each other? We just are going to pretend to like each other and maybe or maybe not call later on, you know. Like let's get to the juice and the nectar in every conversation, every connection, for every dinner. Don't let the time go by. The time is now to dive in deep in every moment.
Does CJ say she's an ENFJ too?
she's all she's she's not so she's more balanced on the EI and the FJ.
Okay.
I mean the PJ rather. Yep. So and we're getting into psychology now on our
I
show.
know, gotta love that.
So communication. What else is there? Let's talk about listening. We haven't talked about listening.
Now, is that part of it?
As we talk and talk and talk and talk and expect that people are out there listening.
Yeah.
Man, there's some
Feel free to ask any questions or throw out anything too, even though,
it's the most important thing is to be able to listen beyond the storyline. It's in the energy. What was said a little bit earlier when I referenced that we're not looking for what people are saying, we're looking for what's beyond what they're not saying. And so what we want to do in this connection that we have when we bring the God consciousness in, find a neutral space and listen with innocence. Well, you can't listen with innocence if your ears are plugged into your mind. It doesn't work. So your ears have to be plugged into your heart. So how do you open up and say, okay, here comes a big one. It's obvious this is not a normal conversation about, what are we having for dinner. So in that point, take a moment, open up your heart and connect your ears to your heart. Because when you listen from your heart and you go into the recognition that the story isn't real, simply the movement of the energy and what's behind the story is what we want to illuminate with our presence. And we can't do that for somebody. We can certainly step back and give them a resistance-free zone. Because if you say something that I don't like and I get defensive about it and spill my tea on myself and get a little upset, then what can happen is that what was about to come out of your mouth that was going to resolve the entire situation, I'll let my own egoic structure get in the way of that, and then we don't get past it. So listening from the heart, completely with the heart, I feel is the primary number one thing in every intimate relationship or business partnership, whatever you want to look at it.
Yeah, and I think sometimes a simple tool in that sort of communication is to also, after you hear what somebody has said, instead of necessarily coming up with a response right away, you could say,
that's what the mind does.
What I hear you saying is to make sure you actually did hear what they said, because our own past programming, our own triggers, our own fears can absolutely distort what we just heard. And so to go into the situation with the awareness of, wow, this is triggering an emotion in me that I know could distort the way that I'm hearing this, the way that I'm interpreting this, the assumptions that I'm making about what is being said means, or the worries about the future of where it's going, all of those things that can come up, to use the ability to pause, to feel what's going on beyond even for ourselves, and then to reiterate back to that person, because often they're also wanting a sounding board, they're also wanting to be acknowledged and wanting to be heard. And so how can we use a simple tool, which is just, hey, real quick before we move forward, I just want to make sure that what I'm hearing you say is...
Or just shut up.
Yeah, that works too.
I mean, in order to get into what wants to happen, we've got to get it off the fix-it wagon. Like you and I, like all of a sudden it feels like I'm threatened, like you're going to leave or something. I want to fix that. And I don't even know that that's where I'm going, but I'm going. And so I can't even really hear what you're saying because I've seeing a problem, or that can be solved, or I've got some practice that you can do that'll take you out of it or whatnot. And what you're saying is, no, what I really want to do, I want to get all of this feeling out of me, all of this stuff out of me, so that what is beyond that I have never had access to in my life comes available to me, so that I can have a transformation.
Yeah, and how beautiful is it to really try to create that sort of reflection or space for somebody, so that they can, so that we can come into the connection and get to those places that maybe we haven't gone before, and to be able to feel safe doing that in partnership. I think so often we think we have to get it figured out first, or come to some sort of conclusion or solution before even bringing it to the partner. And there's so many stories and so many assumptions and so many projected ideas of the future that are happening in between that could be resolved or clarified if you actually brought it to the table, brought it to the conversation.
Every solution is right there in front of us. if we can be quiet long enough and let what wants to emerge out of the empty space. And I got to say, as a white male in this society, the way I grew up, I shut down so many conversations, so many things growing up when I was young, because my ego wanted to be in control of the situation and not really get to the nectar of it. You know, it's like really, really having to train the self to become uncomfortable in those empty spaces out there. So you've got these empty spaces where people want to say something, but something's about to emerge. It's like, how do we give? And that's really what I mean when we have that divine part. There's you, there's me, and then there's something else. How can we give way to the something else, to the divine connectivity, to the divine spark, to allow something happen that's beyond the rational mind? And that's why we listen with the heart, because that can really open up those. It's really like an echo space in there. It's like it reverberates. Then you don't have, the sound when it comes in isn't so sharp. It comes in, it's softer because it's coming into the heart. And if sometimes, you know, you're having this conversation, two people get over triggered and they're just going to have a fight, and then they're going to have a great make-up sex, and you know what? They learn something.
Yeah.
And they're innocent there too.
Hey, that's one way of doing it. And I think also sometimes it doesn't need to be resolved in that moment. You know, the idea of, do we have to resolve it in this moment? If both parties are to a heightened state, are there some intentions you can set from the beginning that are about saying, I want us to feel safe and secure enough with our connection that if there's, you know, something going on, that even if we both needed to take a little bit of space, even if we had to go take a breather, or go for a walk, whatever the case may be, let's both get to right-mindedness. Let's decide that we only know that we can resolve anything from a place of right-mindedness, from a place of love, from a place of peace. And I think there's certain things we can that we personally say that's really helpful, and it might look different for you based on your spiritual practices. But I mean, Holy Spirit, be you in charge is one of the things that we say from A Course in Miracles. And it's just saying, we don't know. Again, we're not saying no, and we don't know what is meant to come of this. So Holy Spirit, be you in charge. And it just reminds us about the top of our triangle. And that's a word and verbiage we relate to. And you could find something similarly for yourself or for your partnership.
Divine alignment is great. You know, when I started hearing the word divine plan alignment, and I started to actually work with this awareness of coming into the divine plan, coming into alignment with the divine plan for my life, in the beginning I misinterpreted it like there's some kind of like exact plan for our life. The divine plan for our life is to actually be a conscious creator of our life, and to be 100% responsible and fully in charge of where we point our attention and our awareness, and what we do with our hands, and how we give ourselves to the world. That's being in alignment with divine plan. It means being present in every moment. So, but the purpose, I feel like, for all of us is to love.
Yeah.
And then how it shows up is a mission. We get to choose that. It's like, how would I like my love to express itself in the world? And so when we come around to the new moon, whether it's in personally working in our yoga practice, or working on our manifestation techniques, or in our connection, we're starting over with that new moon, and we're saying yes to that part of us that is the divine creator, and that part of us that is bringing the divine creator. To Barbara's point, two powerful people in their divine creatorship bringing in the third, then that is an ultimate manifesting machine.
Yeah, it creates, and love is meant to extend.
Yep.
And, you know, I think a lot of times when relationships can get into a place of fear or contraction or constriction, there's almost a desire to limit or to exclude. And that's one of the powerful things about us setting the intentions, and saying, you know, we want our love and our connection to create and to extend and to be, you know, felt and experienced by those around us. And so how can we stay within divine plan alignment, within divine alignment individually, taking care of ourselves, taking care of our own spiritual practices and disciplines, so that we can show up together and integrate in a way that is meant to also be shared.
And fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we're both dedicated to having a lot of fun. It's not a requirement to having relating on the lunar cycle, but it sure makes it a lot more fun.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think it's really well, and the idea of extending, like that's fun. Us, saying, "Hey, I want you to do absolutely what brings you happiness
Yep.
and joy and excitement, and I want you to have the people in your life who facilitate that energy for you, and I'm going to, take care to keep fostering those energies and those connections that are really important to me." And then we have our own individual worldly stuff that goes on at the same time, and it's really supporting and encouraging each other to be those best versions of ourselves.
And we don't spend a lot of time on it. These are very simple things that happen just in the course of normal conversation about what's happening in the lunar cycle. When you have two people that are fully in charge or fully responsible for their own experience, then when they have a ripple in their experience, they begin to work it out within themselves and use the connection to actually enhance what they're already doing, and that makes it for a more pleasant connection rather than the old ways of doing it. But it's a really simple thing. We have simple questions for each part of the lunar phase, simple things to share, and it's so effective. I mean, this is what, month 2? Like, for real, month 2.
Yeah.
And what's your experience? Like, you had never heard of relating on the lunar cycle before you met me. Like, what has this been like for you?
I can speak from past experience in that with A Course in Miracles, it does a lot on the special or guilty relationship and the holy relationship. So these have been ideas and things I've been playing around with and implementing, in past connections to the best of my ability, right? With someone else, with other people who didn't necessarily have a spiritual practice. And so what's been really empowering and awesome for me about this is this feels like a really beautiful way to integrate the ideas of innocence, the ideas of a holy relationship, the ideas that love is freedom. And so, I had never related it to the lunar cycle before, but I had definitely tried different ways of dating and ways of relating that were, predicated on some of the same ideas, but I can't say I'd ever done it in partnership with someone else who was already in alignment with those ideas. It was kind of, I still gave myself a lot of good practice, but it does seem incredibly easy and natural. And so that's why, I'm recognizing that those two ideas coming together, my spiritual practice and where your spiritual development has taken you, that they're universal truths that are actually the easier, softer way in comparison to some aspects of my past. I can look at and see, okay, it really helps when two people are on the same page and, willing to express and share that.
And that's what it does. It puts you on the same page.
Yeah.
Even though you're two different books. You've got your book, I've got my book, but we're on the same page going through this thing. And it really is a way of looking at oneself and looking at the other in such a beautiful, pristine way.
Yeah, and we get to give ourselves the experience of, wow, this is the easier way. Even though my fear tells me having that conversation should be absolutely avoided, even though my fear tells me that I have to change or be different or retract or, do something differently in order to get or receive love, that's the hard way. That's the hard way. Fear is the hard way.
And in kind of a weird kind of way, it's like, if we do have, and we're too early into this to, it's been all good so far.
Yeah.
And so, but when you get into it, and you get, if there was a ripple down the way, to have the opportunity to reset at the new moon and to practice these things can give you a fresh start. You can fall in love. You can have the honeymoon period all over again like you first met. And that's what I've experienced with this, is that you don't just settle into a relationship and then you make these sort of compromises and you go forward and there's really no marker except for an anniversary and you throw a big party. You've actually got this thing that's happening all the time to remind you that no, the purpose of the relationship is to heal and to grow and to serve some larger purpose. And it's amazing what that does. It changes the entire sort of platform or foundation, if you will, on how we're relating, because we get to start over all the time. And that's the truth about life. Everything's changing.
Is that we are doing that all the time either way. It's just sometimes we, get ourselves indebted to this idea of where it's supposed to be going and all of these different things. And I love that it takes that aspect out of it. That instead it's, okay, we're going into this lunar cycle and we're both going to have our own individual experiences through it, and that's going to inevitably change and shift the way we relate and the way we connect and the way we communicate. And there's going to be some times within the lunar cycle where we're just like killing the game and communicating, and then there's going to be, other times where it's like, oh, okay. I mean, it's a letting go phase. Of course, we're not chatting as often. We're in our process.
And and we've actually found that that when we are full moon to new perspective, we dance on the fringes more. Yeah.
We give each other more space.
Yeah.
And and then again, go back to the idea of not personalizing, being like, oh, I'm in my process, they're in their process, and we're innocent.
Yeah. Yep. Like I said on the first show, it's really hard to get mad at somebody when you know they're really yourself. You're really looking, I am you, you are I. To really be a person of cause is to get that.
Everyone is responsible. No one is at fault.
Yeah, we're all in a projected consciousness. We're responsible for what we experience. We may not be in control of any of it. We can have charge about where we put our attention, where we put our hands, what we think about, where our mind is, but the rest of it we've got to give up and be clear about what we want. And my favorite expression is be free in what you dream about and be free with what shows up in the dream. That's the key. Be free about what you want to dream and be free about what shows up. And that's a beautiful thing. You've shown up in my dream. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being in my dream too. Well, and what's interesting, and I think this is one of the things, both of us have gotten to share with each other, is the fact that we've been preparing ourselves to have this to practice these principles that we've both been individually working on for a long time in partnership, right? And so, and we also get to see, wow, this is a reflection of the work I've done, right? That literally these things show up as a reflection, and that also, that means I take full responsibility for all the other, reflections, and I choose to see their beauty. And I choose to see how that grew me into a place where I get to show up in this way now, and I get to forgive myself for the ways I wasn't able to show up in that way then, and recognize that was a valuable part of the process.
And if there's any thought that I have that past connection, that past situation was anything, any judgment at all, to immediately take the responsibility to self-correct that. What do I need to do to let go of this false projection that somebody else is at fault?
Yeah.
Or that I'm at fault. Everybody's doing the best they can. Everybody's innocent,
Yeah. Yeah, I love the idea of how simple does it become if we really are wanting to, protect one another's innocence?
Get the card deck.
Okay.
Coming up at 4:30, we got about 15 minutes left. We'd love to have some questions, and we're going to pick a card.
And hopefully one of us can see them.
Yeah, right.
Oh, I forgot there was change in here. This is a really cool deck, in that it's called the Tao Oracle. And it's by the same creator as the Osho deck, which I know was a big part of other podcasts that you have on your page that you did with Matthew Bailey. But yeah, it's cool. It uses I Ching and all sorts of things. A card flipped out.
Well, let's see what it is.
Okay. When you're shuffling and then just one comes up. But this is a great one, so I'm totally going with it. So this is the card of increase. Called Increase. And so it is number 42, and it says...
It's the magic number of the universe. 42.
42.
Yep. I don't think people got a good look at it.
Probably
not.
not.
A good look at it, yeah. Right.
And so the words on this are sharing, reaping rewards, overflow, expansion, flowering, encouragement, fertile ground, and abundance. I'm not mad at it. Where are you guys hoping to see some increase in your life? That's what I'd love to know is where do we want to invite the idea of increase? Whether it's an increase of energy, whether it's an increase of tangible abundance, whether it's an increase of love, to welcome the idea that of worthiness, of being deserving, of tapping into the energy and field of being willing to receive.
It's a great question. And it brings us back to what you and I talk about sometimes, that when you have resistance, you know, a lot of times we want to go out in the world and try to fix our mistakes or our problems or our challenges or whatever, when we can go inside and simply with breathing and opening our heart increase our desire field. So you're asking about what are these things? You ought to maybe read that off again. How do we open up inside our natural desire field so that our magnetism brings them into our life rather than us having to go chase them down? Deep connection, says your mom. Card of increase, number 42.
Yeah, so
it's also Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. They said that's the magic number of the universe.
Oh,
So,
really?
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's sharing, reaping rewards, overflow, expansion, flowering, encouragement, fertile ground, and abundance.
So if we cultivate the feeling within of all of those things, and we cultivate that feeling within, then we share it, and then we grow that feeling, wouldn't we see that flower in our regular life as well?
You know, and this reminds me, you know, I do nightly lessons of A Course in Miracles through 365, and right now, where we're at in the lessons is what is a miracle? And it talks about the fact that a miracle is a correction. And one of the things that it says about it too is when we ask for a miracle, and a miracle, according to A Course in Miracles, is a correct perception, then the mind has been made ready to open itself up to an answer that hasn't been conceived of yet. And so in those situations where we're not, you know, we know what we want, but maybe we're not sure how to get there, to ask to have, you know, a loving perception of the situation so that our mind is open to receive an answer maybe we haven't thought of yet.
Not maybe.
Yeah. Like, get our minds ready, say, you know, and that's where the we don't know comes from. You know,
CJ's talking about it. She's been in the I don't know. Sometimes we just need to admit that I don't know. I surrender. I don't know. It's okay. If we're confused, hey, I'm confused. It's okay to be confused sometimes.
Yeah.
It's a very human thing, you know. I don't know. We spent our entire world's looking at the way our educational system is built around the more you know, the more power you have. That's what's happening in COVID. It's going to be a reverse of that. And the less you know going forward, the better off you're going to be in kind of some kind of weird way.
the more adaptable,
Yeah.
the more open, the more, you know,
Open to
flexible.
the magic,
Yeah.
possibilities. Are you open to the possibility of magic or a miracle? I love this. Let's go back to this. So, a miracle, what you're saying is correct perception.
And that takes us back to, you know, love versus fear. When I'm in fear, I want to recognize I am viewing this situation from a distortion. That my vision of this situation, my vision of this person, my vision of this conversation, whatever the case may be, is distorted when I'm in a place of fear. And I'm creating what I don't want, right? Because
Right.
I'm putting fear into the situation, and so inevitably I'm adding that energy to the situation. And so the other thing it says in that part of the lesson is it says, you know, the asking for the miracle, first we have to do that on faith. You know, that it's on faith. It's saying, okay, I'm ready to receive an answer I haven't conceived of yet, but also that the miracle, the correct perception, the loving perception is going to bring the witnesses that justify your faith in it. So, and what it really ends up saying is that then you recognize that forgiveness is justified. Forgiveness of yourself for the distortion, forgiveness of what you may have projected on the other person, forgiveness for the state of lack we might have been feeding, or however it might be showing up in our lives, that we have to get back to that place of love, back to that place of peace, and then all of a sudden we actually see that what's revealed to us is a world that is more real than the one we thought was there before, that was based in fear.
Wow. We ought to get you on the show more often.
I think I'm free next week, 3:33.
Speaking of, what time is it? We have no idea because we're technologically 4:32. We have just eons of time. We could go on and on and on and on and on.
We could.
To Mercury and Pisces.
I know. Watch out.
So you have so to be in a place of I need a miracle or I want a miracle. For instance, I'm at the River House right now and I have a contract to buy this place that expires in 26 days or something. So the being able to close on the property, we call that the miracle. That's the correct perception of it, you're saying.
Yeah, and the correct perception is saying, right now, if I'm seeing this situation or this challenge or this, what appears to be this obstacle in front of me, right, is it's asking for a miracle of the right way to look at it in that moment. In that moment. So not even, it says that it doesn't transcend time, it doesn't even transcend perception, and it doesn't exceed the function of forgiveness, right? So that it's meant to stay within time's grasp so we can use it now. It can be used right now. And so, but what it does is it readies the mind to be open to a solution or resolution that hasn't been conceived of yet. But the first thing, we want to ready the mind. And so to ready the mind is to say, I need to try to perceive the situation as it is right now from the eyes of love.
From the eyes of love.
How can I do that so that my mind is ready to be given an answer that it hasn't conceived of yet?
All right. Stay tuned, everyone.
Yeah, stay tuned. Because, this is the work we're doing, and we get to do it,
Well, you and I have, what you and I teach is exactly the same. We have different methodologies.
Yeah.
And we have, but the core principles were very, very similar. It's been really fun to explore and get to know both sides. Let's see what people are saying. I don't know. We don't know.
Bunch of us.
We don't know where this is going. We really don't. How do you feel about your commitment to the River House? That's a great question. I feel great about my commitment. I love this place. I have something to do every day. It always gives me both exactly what I need to grow and what I'm ready to experience and enjoy, and endless creativity. And yeah.
Well, and that's the thing. I think inviting people, honestly and transparently into the journey, what that does is, like, sometimes the miracle or the correct perception is us being willing to get into that state of communication, because it may be someone else that has the idea that hasn't been conceived of yet.
Absolutely.
And staying open-minded and open-hearted to that. But when we're in a place of any fear or constriction, one of the challenges is that we've already kind of created a roadmap, or we've already created a vision of exactly how we had thought it would go. And if we don't end up in that place, it can kind of block our vision from the other avenues or the other ways of getting there, whether that be a peaceful resolution to relationship conflict, a work conflict, things going on with the River House, all of those things. It readies our mind to get a wider lens, and that wider lens may be someone else coming in the form of a miracle with an idea that just hadn't been thought of yet.
Yeah. So let's get back to your mom's question, and how do you feel about your commitment to the River House? And so, when I look around at this place, and if you let the art speak for itself, and it shows you what the commitment, like, I know what it takes to run this place. I know what it takes to keep it up like this, and I've been here to see the thousands of people that have come through here and seen the transformation. Like, I don't know how it was that I became so graced to have a place like this, but it is so, and so CJ's asking, what does a miracle look like at the River House? I'm still here. I've been here. I got here with $8 in quarters 7 years ago. There's no reason for me to still be here on some sort of rational, realistic. Everybody told me I need to get a job, go make money, whatnot. I focused on giving. I focused on service. I focused on loving, forgiving. Focused on what we're doing right now, over and over and over, every day, serving other people in their journey. And ultimately, that was sort of my commitment to myself when this whole thing started. It was like, I heard it very clearly. Stop asking for money from people and serve them. Don't be in it to see what you can get out of it. Because because this guy, where I grew up and what I came from was very in it for me. So my path, and this is not for anybody else necessarily, was to stop looking at it, what was in it for me. How do I just keep giving? And, you know, we've had no money here so many times, and the money showed up. We've had businesses that have popped up at the right time, Airbnb being an example. We've had people show up with money that we needed exactly in the moment to pay the rent that we didn't know where it was coming from, because we focused on our heart, we focused on our art, and we focused on one another. And I feel like at the end of the day, that will rain out. I mean, that's my
purpose,
commitment. The one way, the miracle that we're now referencing is the seed for that miracle was set 7 years ago when I said I was going to be here for the rest of my life, and I made that declaration, and I've been behind it ever since.
Yeah, and the beauty that's come from it, you know, I think what's been interesting, you know, and I first came on the property for, you know, an event that was being hosted by a friend here, a retreat that was being hosted by a friend, and I mean, there just is something about when you come onto the property, you know, whether you're getting the opportunity to go chill in the creek and, you know, stack Karens, or whether you're able to, you know, walk through the labyrinth. And that's been the interesting thing, is to listen about the journey of where it started, and then to see the labyrinth that's there now, and to see the yoga studio that's there now. And recently there's been a transformation to a studio out there, Studio Ease. And
Not to mention the stage.
oh yeah, the stage. I cannot believe I forgot. There's a stage now. And that is the miracle. You know, the miracle, I think, is what it's turned into. And that's, you know, you, but also other individuals who have found it along their path, coming and making these contributions and showing up in their art and showing up in their purpose, and the way that the whole thing has just unfolded.
Yeah. And it's really, I get two different people kind of show up here.
Mm-hmm.
The people that have a lot of ideas, and then the people that actually jump in.
Yeah.
And you know, that's always an interesting thing to watch. Both are equally
Valuable,
valid.
yeah.
Absolutely, you know, and so these are times where we discover who we are. And the great thing, you know, after 7 years of mayhem here, the last month, I've been here 5 nights a week by myself mostly, and sometimes 6 or 7 and in a row, and nobody coming on the property. It's never happened, and that's a miracle.
Yeah.
You know, that's a miracle for this guy to get a rest and to have some freedom and whatnot at the very end of this thing. And no, it doesn't look anything like I thought. And if I'm really, really honest, this is the way that life creates itself around me, and what we're here to demonstrate, which is, you don't need an education, you don't need a certain amount of money, you don't need a background, you don't need a certain color of skin, you don't need anything. Nothing, zero. Matter of fact, if you have nothing, it's a much more powerful place to build upon, because you have to start with your raw energy system, and your raw energy system is absolutely a truth teller as to what you're made of. And so when this thing started for me 8 years ago, or 10 years ago, and then I came back 7 years ago, you know, if you look at the place then, and you look at who I was then, and you look at this place now and who I am now, no matter where it goes, even if it came to a screeching halt and burned to the ground, it was victory.
Yeah.
And it was a miracle.
And that makes me think of, you know, and I picked my teacup for the day, I decided to grab the Evolutionary Guidebook mug, but I was looking at number 7 and number 8, and 7 is nothingness, and it says, dive into the mystery, into not knowing, and become what wants to happen. You know, and then number 8, which is alchemy, and that's see perfection now, for only perfection exists. What is happening now is divinely orchestrated.
What is happening now is divinely orchestrated. If we could get our little teeny tiny noggins and our big wide open hearts around that it's already perfect and it continues to happen perfectly, and there's a higher intelligence behind the scenes, then what the heck do we have to worry about, Megan?
I don't know. Well, that is and that takes us right back into non-judgment, right? To see the perfection now is to get into non-judgment. And sometimes the perfection now does look like fears we need to look at, fears we need to work through. The biggest thing is just don't keep throwing, anyone can just keep throwing it in the trunk of the car. Anyone can just put it in the
Ooh,
closet.
yeah, nice
Anybody
one.
can, hey, I'm only calling myself out, right? There might be some other ones here. But what does it look like to actually sift through that, to be willing to look at it, to be willing to move through it?
So we're running right up against Sammy says coming in with a blank slate is a miracle gift in it of itself. Coming in with a blank slate. Yeah.
And that's a huge part of what this We Don't Know is about, is us recognizing that blank slate, us staying curious, us
Yeah.
staying open, and so it's been so cool to be able to connect with all of you in this way.
Yeah. So that brings us to 4:44.
Oh wow, we're already here.
We're already here, yeah.
Wonderful.
Somehow we've filled up an entire hour and 11 minutes.
Awesome. Again, if you want to be entered in, when are we going to actually compile all the names and pick? Have we decided?
I think after this show, it'd be
After
just
this show.
after this show. If you made a comment with an idea, or you shared
the video.
somewhere, or signed up a couple of thousand of your friends, and
Yeah.
we're happy to send you a T-shirt. All right, it's 4:44. Everybody, thank you so much from Boulder, Colorado, the River House. This is Megan and Mr. E.
All right, you're loved,
And we don't know,
you're loving, and you're lovable.
and we don't know.
And we don't. Well, we do know that.
We do know that, yes.